are ready to go, Mr. Evans. I appreciate you coming. Thank you, everybody, for being patient. I give you David Evans, Evans, right?
Right.
And then Learning Services Director at SoftChalk.
Exactly. Well, okay. Well, welcome everybody. What we're going to be looking at today is we're going to look at the, let's say, the new SoftChalk. Now, I'm at your SoftChalk login. This is the SoftChalk cloud, but it's special for the West Virginia network. All you have to do is enter your username and password, and that could be sent to you. And I'm not sure exactly who that would be, but I think you can check with Harmony, and she will let you know what your username and password could be or how to create an account. Now, and you can click on this Join Now to allow you to create your account. And all you really need is an activation key to be able to join or create your SoftChalk Cloud account. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to log in as just a regular SoftChalk Cloud user, and I'm going to be DAE SoftChalk. I'll then put in my password and then log in. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask questions anytime you would like. I'm not sure how they're working. I guess it's coming through as a chat question. And so you can ask your questions, and I'll try to answer them as they come in. You can either use the chat window or else as a question and answer window, however you would like. And I'll try to answer the questions as they do come in. Now, the first thing we're looking at is the SoftChalk, or is your home screen, let's say, of your personalized SoftChalk cloud. Now, what does it mean by saying it's personalized? Well, you have the ability to store your content so it becomes part of, let's say, an open education system within the West Virginia network. So only people who are members of your West Virginia network can actually access that content to be able to use it. You will be able to distribute it to your students very quickly and very easily through your learning management system. And I understand that you're changing to Brightspace, and that'll work really well. I think I have another session that will show you how you can create or how you can use content that you've created with the SoftChalk cloud and place it into your learning management system. So we'll see how that's going to be done. Now, the purpose today is to show you how you can create new content or create content and store it within the SoftChalk cloud. Now, when I look at content, there are 3 different storage areas that we have available to you or for you within your cloud. And that would be learning objects, lessons, and files. If I start with files, I'm going to show you a structure that I can use, and I've created folders already to store content for, let's say, a Mythical Education 301 course that I'm teaching. And what I know I'm going to be using are images. So I have a whole series of images available in my cloud so I can access them from any computer anytime I would like. I also see that I have a folder for PDF files where, again, I can access these from any computer anytime I would like. And I also have one for some special content that I might want to use within a lesson that I'm going to be creating. Now, the next content storage area that we have are learning objects. Now, learning objects are, let's say, activities, and we have 16 available activities for you that you create with the SoftChalk Create program, and then you could store them in the cloud so you can reuse them. Some examples of them, well, they could be a hotspot activity. It can also be a scored activity, let's say, dealing with a slideshow. So here we have an example of a slideshow that I can have. And this is for my Education 301 class. So it's going to be a history of instructional designers that we can create within the SoftChalk Create program. So we can store learning objects, we can store files, and finally, we can store our final object, which is going to be our lessons that we're eventually going to be giving to our students. Now, I'm going to be creating a lesson. I'm going to do this, and I guess I'll first of all create a folder, and this is for my Education 301 course. So I'll create all of the content that I'm going to be giving to my students digitally is going to be placed in this Education 301 class, or folder. So let's get started by creating content. Now, when you're ready to create content with SoftChalk Create, it's really easy. There's nothing to install. You've just logged into your SoftChalk or your cloud account, and then you click on this plus sign, and it can be a plus sign next to lessons or my folder name, and it will then create a lesson within that particular folder. So I'm going to create a lesson right here. Now, this is for those of you who have been around and seen SoftChalk create the application. This is Create Online. Now, that means that you can actually use an iPad to create your own content. You don't have to use a computer. Pretty cool. You can even use your smartphone to start creating content if you would like. Now, at this point, you're ready to start typing. Now, as you look at the toolbars, we have our standard, let's say these are our editing, font editing, and paragraph formatting tools, where I can copy a format, I can remove a format, I can apply a style, I can change the font and the size, I can enhance my text by making it bold or italic or underlined. I can strike through, I don't know why it's there, but it's available. I could put in superscripts and subscripts and superscripts, and then I can deal with paragraph formatting. Now, those are standard tools that you're used to using. I also can insert objects. I can insert graphics, or I can insert images, media, links, iframes, widgets, tables, a lot of different things. And then we have our SoftChalk tools that allow me to add special SoftChalk items. And that would be like activities, quiz questions, equations, both math and chemistry equations, and then some special text enhancements. Now I'm looking at my time, and I've got until about 10:50, and if my clock is looking correctly here, that gives me a little bit less than 40 minutes. Let's see what I can create in 40 minutes. First, to add content and really speed up my process, I'm going to be using this Microsoft Word file that I previously used to give my students as a handout. Now, this Word file, notice, is 7 pages and it's 2,300 plus words. It's got styled paragraphs in it. It's got graphic items. And I think if I look at my graphic items, you'll notice that the alt text is already there. As I scroll down, there's lots of images. You may also notice that I've got some links that I'm going to be using. I've got a lot of different kinds of content. I've got numbered paragraphs, bulleted paragraphs, quite a lot of things. I'm going to select all of this content, copy it to my clipboard, and I just use keyboard shortcuts to do that. And then I'm going to come back into SoftChalk Create Online, where I'm now ready to paste, Control V, all of that content. And it's now placing all of that content inside of, let's try that again. It's now placing all of that content in my lesson. And there it is. I've now built that lesson. Now, what it remembered were all of the graphics. It remembered all of the styled paragraphs. It remembered bulleted paragraphs and numbered paragraphs. Now, some things that I want you to notice. This little red underline indicates that some words have been mistyped. Well, I can fix the spelling by control right mouse clicking on the word that's misspelled. So we have this online automatic spell check, so you can quickly fix typos or see the typos and fix them. Now, as I look at bulleted paragraphs, sometimes we might like to change the bullets that we're using. Rather than numbered, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to enhance that. And rather than it being numbers, I'm going to use lowercase letters. Notice I can use lowercase Roman numerals or uppercase Roman numerals if I would like. I'm going to use lowercase letters so I can modify the bullets that have been created within SoftChalk Create. And these bulleted paragraphs, in this case, my list, was created from Word. And notice it remembered or duplicated that. If I look at a regular bulleted list, that can also be modified very quickly by changing the bullet shape. Okay, so I've now modified some of my text just a little bit. Now I'm going to go all the way up to the beginning of my lesson, and I have this quotation by Patty Shank. I'm going to emphasize this quotation. I'm going to do that by applying a block quote. So I'll click on this. I've got 7 different styles for how I want this quote to appear to my students. And I'll put in an attribution, which is the person's name, which is Patty Shank. I'll then click OK. And that's the way my block quote now appears. Now you'll notice there's a border going around it. And that border is the same color as my heading style text that was duplicated from Word. Important because heading styles make my lesson accessible to my students who are using screen readers. Now I'm going to go into my properties tool, and I am going to first of all apply a different theme to a lesson. All lessons have a theme when you first start. It's called the Cobalt theme. I'm going to change that, and I'm going to make it a Bilbao, which is a green color scheme, just so we could see a big difference on my screen. So I've now applied a theme. I'll click OK. And that's the way it appears. Now, I noticed when I put all of this content in from Word, it removed the page breaks. I'm going to add a couple of page breaks. Just place my cursor where I want my page to end, and then click on this little page break tool. So I've now created a few page breaks. Let me create 1 or 2 more. I just place my cursor where I want the page to end. And then I tell it, let's end the page. So I now have multiple pages. Now that rule works most of the time. The only time it doesn't is when I'm at the end of a bulleted or a list. I simply end the list, and then I can end the page. And I ended the list simply by pressing enter a few times. So I've now created a multiple page lesson. I've applied a theme to it. Let's give this lesson a name, and I'll call this lesson 1. First lesson I'm creating, and I'm ready to save it. Now, when I save that lesson, let me come back and try that again. Let me just save this. There we go. It's now saved. Now, what does that mean it's saved? If I close this and I come back into my Education 301 folder, there's my lesson. Now let's continue editing it. So I'll click on the pencil now to the right of the lesson name, and let's now preview this so we can see what it will look like. And there's my lesson. It's a 6-page lesson. Notice we have a table of contents here that shows each one of the pages and the content that is on each page. Pretty cool. If I go back to page 1, What we've also created is a responsive design lesson. Now, what does that mean? Well, if I would reduce the size of my window and maybe make it a cell phone size, what it has done is reduce the size of the graphic to also fit within the window. So it doesn't matter what size device my students are viewing my content in, it's still going to look pretty good. Now I'm going to maximize this window again and close this preview because I want to make some changes to it. First, I would like to title my lesson. The name, it's called Lesson 1, but the title is a property that I can easily add. I'm going to call this a history of instructional designers. I'll just put that in as my title. It is for my Education 301 course, and this is for Lesson 1. I have 3 different layouts that are available. The classic layout gives us a kind of normal looking lesson, something that you might have seen today and 5 years ago, etc. A horizontal gives us an updated look to our lesson, and vertical really gives us a complete kind of change to our lesson. So I'm going to make this appear as a vertical lesson for now. All of the navigation that is currently available, I'm going to allow because I'm going to make this a open navigation lesson. Okay, now that I've done all of that, I'm going to click OK. And let's preview this again. Notice the little star up here lets me know that my lesson has changed without it being saved. When I click on preview, it not only shows me what the current lesson looks like, but it saves what I have done. Now, this is called the vertical layout. And what it does is it puts the title and the subtitle in a sidebar and then shows me all of my content. I'll close this, come back into SoftChalk Create. Now, what I would like to do, well, first of all, I am going to name each one of my pages. And I can name my pages simply by going to that Properties tool again, and then clicking on the Page Names button. And now I'm ready to create my first page name, and this is going to be my introduction to my instructional designers. Okay, my second page, I put these designers in a particular order. And I'm going to say that the second page has some early designers. The third page is where I'm dealing with psychologists in design. The fourth page is dealing with business in design. And then the fifth page, my fifth page is going to be media and designers. And then my sixth page will be what I'm going to describe as my specialty designers. So I've now created page names, and I'll click OK. Now, how do they appear? Well, when I preview it, saving the changes once again, it then shows me all of my pages that I've just created. And I could now point and click and move to any one of those pages. Now, as I look at this page, notice we have B.F. Skinner, we have Benjamin Bloom, but I don't see Roger Schenck. The reason I don't is very simple. As I look at the styled paragraphs that introduce the person, they're heading one style, except for Roger Schenck. So I simply choose the heading one style. That's how I can create a navigation point, a place we want students to navigate to. I simply click on a paragraph and apply a heading style, either heading 1 and in some instances, heading 2. Now I notice that I have images for most of my people here, but I don't have one for B.F. Skinner, and I'd really like one. Well, I can add an image by placing my cursor where I want the image to go, and then clicking on this Insert Image tool. It now asks me, well, where is it coming from? Is it coming from your local storage? Is it coming from the cloud storage? And I'm going to say, yes, that's where it's coming from. I'll select the file. I'll look inside of my Education 301 folder, and there's my image of B.F. Skinner. I'll click OK. I need to put in an alt text and then choose how I want this to look to my students. I'm going to make the height about 70 because I think that's what all the other images are. I like drawing a border around the image, and I also like offsetting it from the right, because that's where the text is going to approach it, by 10. And what that's going to do is leave a little bit of a gap. I'll then come back here, click OK. Well, we'll see why that's not working. I'll close that. Yeah, I'm going to say OK. And that should have added the image. Let's try that again. I'll just click. I'll go to my cloud file. I'm going to select the file from my cloud. I'll look inside of my images page, and I'm going to choose B.F. Skinner. I need to put in the alt text, and I'll click OK. It's a little bit too large of an image, so I'm going to modify the image. I'm going to change its height and make it 70. I'll then click OK, and there's my image. Now, I would like to leave some space between the image that came in from Microsoft Word and my text. And notice it's a little bit close. So I'm going to change the margin or spacing on the right. I do like drawing borders around it, and I'll click OK. And that separates the text from the image pretty nicely. Now, as I look through my lesson, it looks okay, but I realize I may want to add other kinds of images. Like what I would like to do here is add an image that I have stored locally of Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy. So I am going to navigate locally on my computer where I have images stored. And then I'll choose the image that I want to use, open it, decide whether I want it to stand alone, and I do in this case, and then I put in my image, let's say caption, or my, rather than the caption, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting in a description of this particular image. So this would be Bloom's taxonomy, would be a title, and then what I would also like to do is put in a description of what this image is. So I have Bloom's taxonomy, and then I've indicated that this is in a triangle, and I've described each one of the different objects or areas of my triangle. And actually, I'm going to put it in the different location where it should be. So I'll click in my alternative text, put that in. I also want to draw a border around the object, and I'll click OK. Now notice this object does not allow text to wrap around it. So I have the ability to put in images with text and images without text wrapping around them. Now I'd like this to be centered. Because it has no text wrapping around it, I can easily click on my center alignment tool and have it centered in my lesson. Well, let's do the same thing with this image that came in from Microsoft Word. And even this image can be centered because the image itself has an alignment of not set. And that means that it's an inline image that I could then adjust and place it by using my paragraph formatting where I would like the image to go. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in or try to create a history of instructional designers. And I'm going to do that by creating an activity. The activity that I'm going to be creating is going to be an image map activity where I'm going to increase the size of this window. I'll select the graphic that I'm going to be using. I'm going to get it from my local storage, and I'm just going to scroll until I can find the roadmap that I want to use. So this is the image that I'm going to now be using for my image map. Now what I want to do is click on my plus sign and create an area that my students will then click on. Once I've created that area, right below the image, there is a heading where I could put in the name of the person that I am describing, and then put in information that I want my students to know about Edgar Dale. So I'm just going to click in that area and then type. So I got too much here. Let me get rid of some of it. There. That's what I want my students to know about Edgar Dale. Now, if I wanted to, I can actually even include an image of Edgar Dale. I'm going to get this from my cloud storage. I'll again look inside of images, choose the Edgar Dale. I want text to wrap around it. I need to put in his name as the alternative text. And again, I like drawing borders around my images. I want to offset the text so it doesn't crash into an edge of the image. And I'm going to change its height and make it only about 60. I'll then click OK, and there's my image within for Edgar Dale. Now let's create another hotspot area. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to outline Bloom. I'm then ready to scroll down and type in Benjamin Bloom. And now I want to put in what I want my students to know about Benjamin Bloom. So again, I'm going to click in that bottom box and I'm going to type. Now, what I'd also like to do is I'm going to actually add a video within this window. So I'm going to click on my media tool and then put in a URL that I know that talks about Bloom's taxonomy. I'm going to make this display at a 480 by 360 video size, and I'll click OK. I'd like this to be centered, so I'll center it in the box. So I could put a lot of information inside of this hotspot image mapping activity. We can preview it. As the students roll over each of the balloons, they get to see what we want them to know about each person. Now, I look at this and I realize that's probably a little bit more than I want them to look at for this activity. So I'm going to close my preview. I'm going to edit the Benjamin Bloom. And what I'm going to do simply is just get rid of the text that I have and just make it appear as a video. I'm going to make this activity appear directly in the lesson, and I'm going to call this a roadmap of instructional designers. Okay, I'm going to click on back and then click OK. I've just created my first activity. I'm going to scroll down and I notice this image is on the right-hand side. I can easily modify that and put it on the right. It doesn't go automatically because there is no right alignment in Microsoft Word. Okay, so I'll click OK, but we do have one within SoftChalk Create. So we've now modified some images. We've added our own image. We've actually added an activity. Let's create some other text enhancements. I'm going to select this text, and I'm going to make this into a division block where I want to change the color using the same color as my theme as a background. I want to offset the box from the rest of my lesson. I'll use a margin of 50. And I'm also going to offset the text from inside of my block by 30. And I even want it to display 2 columns. I'll click OK. And I've now created a really different looking block of text, something to enhance my text to really make it stand out. Now, as I scroll down, I have here an image of Gagne's theory of instruction. And if I modify it, you'll notice that the alt text that came in from Word is still there. Now, what I want to do here is I am going to be building a tabbed object, a tab text object that will allow me to put in a lot of text and make it interactive for my students. So I'm ready to create my first really big enhanced text object here. And this is going to be I'll give this first panel a title, and I will call this my instructions. That's my instructions panel. And what I want my students to do is click on each tab to show the information for that event. I'm going to make this appear a little bit larger, 170%. I'll make it boldface and centered. Now I'm ready to create panels for each one of the events of instruction. Now I'm only going to create 3 of them because of a time constraint here, but imagine I would put in all 9 of them. I'll go to the first panel, put in a title. This is going to be reception. And I probably need to describe what that means to my students. So within the content area, I'll type in what I want my students to know. I'm going to add a video. I'll put in a link for the video. And then, I'm sorry, let me cancel that. And I want to put in a video. So I'll click on my media tool. I'll type in the link, decide the width and the height. I'll make it a little bit smaller than normal. And then click OK. I'd like this to be centered. And I'm ready for my second panel. Now my second panel is going to have, again, its title is going to be, I guess that's expectancy. And then I want to put in what I want my students to know about that. And again, if I wanted to, I can add images, I can add media into my event. Now, let's go and choose how we want this to appear. I'm going to make it a theme color reversed. I'm going to have the tabs go vertically down the left-hand side of my screen. I'm going to make it use the whole screen width. And I'm not going to set a maximum width for my tabs. I'll then tell it to say, well, okay, that's it. I've created it. And I've now created, imagine we would have 9 of these tabs going down the left-hand side of the screen. pretty handy, a way of creating interactive text. Now, at some point in time, I'm probably going to need to get some more information. I probably want to put in a video that I would like my students to watch. So I'm going to come here, right where I want my, right underneath this Malcolm Knowles area, and I'm going to bring in a video. Now, the video I'm going to be using, I'm going to go to a YouTube, the YouTube repository, and I'm going to look for adult education. So I'll search for adult education. I'll scroll down, and here's adult learning theory, which is exactly what I want. So I'll click on this, pause. I'm going to share it with my students, so I just copy that link. Incidentally, that's how I got the other links that we added into our lesson. Now here, I'm just putting it directly in the lesson. It's a URL. It can also come from our local storage or from the cloud. I want this to display, let's say, at a width of 780, and I'll put in a height of 560. I'll then click OK. There's my video that I would like to have centered. Now, after this video, right after this video, what I'd really like to do is add a quiz question. So I am now going to add a single quiz question. It's going to be an essay. And what I want my students to do after they've watched the video, and this is basically to make sure that they have watched it. So I'm going to tell them to, during the video, there's 4 points. You're supposed to pick 2 of them and write an essay about them. I'm going to let this be worth 5 points. I'm going to have this displayed as an object that's embedded directly in the lesson. I'll click OK. I've now created a quiz question. Now, I'm going to modify this because I actually want it to display so it's a pop-up so that the students don't see the quiz question as they're watching the video. This appears when generally they'll have to click on it to make this appear. So I've now added a second or a scoring object into my lesson. Let's create another. I'm going to go to the bottom of my lesson, add another page, make this a major heading for questions, and I'm now ready to add another scoring opportunity. I'm going to make this a drag and drop activity where I'm going to import a list that I've previously created. I'll just navigate into some files that I have already created here. And I'm now ready to create my drag and drop activity where I've put in a person's name and a theory that they are responsible for. Now, if I wanted to add my own, I can click on a plus sign. I could then put in a person's name and then come over here and put in what they are known for. Okay, so I now set a point value for this. I'll let it be worth 10 points. I'm going to allow my students to retry. I'll even show answers. Now I'm ready to go to my options where I can title this, identify the designer, make it appear, and I'm going to embed this directly in the page, click on back and OK. So I've now created another scoring opportunity for my students. Well, let's preview our lesson because we haven't done it for a while. And I've now created this multiple page lesson that's worth 15 points. As I add more scoring items, it would make it be worth more and more points if I would like. Let's go to our first activity, which is this history of instructional designers. Now, something about all of our activities, they all come with keyboard navigation. And all of our activities are accessible to students who are using a keyboard to navigate, and also students who are using a screen reader. So yes, even this image mapping activity is accessible to all of our students. Okay, and there we have our video that they can watch. Now, as I move on in my lesson, I see my enhanced text here. I see my images, and then I see this more enhanced text. I click on reception, and I get to see and watch, or students get to see and watch what we want them to know about that particular topic. Now, as I keep on going here, I then see expectancy. I think my next object that I added was on the next to the last page here. So I'll just move into my specialty designers. There's my video. There's the quiz question. Students can type in their answer, click on finish, and then we'd be able to read the essay. And then finally, on our last page, this is where we have this drag and drop activity where we can drag and we can drop. And if we put it in the right place, it stays there. If we put something in the wrong place, it snaps back. When we finally try and get it into the correct location, it would then stay, but we would not earn any points. Now I'll close that. So we've now really made a different look to our lesson. I'm going to modify my lesson one more time. I'm going to create a sidebar that's going to show, well, heading 1 and heading 2 style paragraphs in the table of contents. Okay, well, that's one thing, but I'm also going to change my lesson by creating an overview page. Initially, if I choose this, it will display a table of contents. Well, what I want it to do is a little bit more than that. I would like to describe to my students what this lesson is. So,
I do apologize, but we are at the 5-minute mark. And so if anybody has any questions, I do encourage you to please ask your questions in the chat. And I apologize for the interruption.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So I've now put in a description of my lesson in my overview page. I'll click OK. I'll preview this, or actually I'll just say preview this, which saves it. And there's our overview page for our lesson, where students can point and click on any page name, or they can start the lesson. Now, remember, our view is that vertical view or vertical layout. Now, I'm going to close this. I'm going to make one more change to my properties and my layout, and I'm going to make it more into a horizontal view, where I'll then click OK. I'm ready to preview it one last time. And my lesson is now being saved. It now looks the same when I start, but then I look at the horizontal layout, which shows me a more traditional look where I see a title and subtitle. And notice now we always see the score on that navigation bar. Okay. Well, that's about all I wanted to show for now. I'm going to close my preview. I'm going to back up and go back into my Education 301 folder. And in my next session, I'm going to take this lesson as well as some learning objects that I have, and I'm going to place them into Brightspace. And I think that's going to be the very next session after this. Thanks, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed our, let's say, design on a dime, quick way to create your own lesson content using SoftChalk Create online.
That was amazing. So we'll look forward to your next session.
All righty. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.